Welcome to Travel Tuesday, part of the Beard Bros Media Network, where culture meets industry. I'm your host, Brian Applegarth. Thanks for being here. Whether you're a seasoned cannabis or hemp professional or just beginning to explore the space, you'll find insights and information here on Beard Bros Travel Tuesday podcast. I'm really excited about our episode today. Our guest is the CCTA, which stands for the Canadian Cannabis Tourism Alliance. Our guests today are Walid Farah, founding board member and president of the CCTA, and Reverend and director of events for the CCTA. Walid helped shape Toronto's cannabis consumption lounge regulation. He co-owns and operates the licensed retail chain Cosmic Gardens with his wife, Jane. Walid, welcome, and thanks for being here.
Thanks.
And
thanks for having me, Brian.
Of course. And Reverend Kelly, of course, Walid. And Reverend Kelly is the founder of KGL Network, Kelly's Green Lounge. She is a leading Canadian cannabis advocate dedicated to integrating cannabis into mainstream society. As a founding and elected board member of the Canadian Cannabis Tourism Alliance, Reverend Kelly serves as co-chair also of the events committee and the administrative outreach liaison. So I want to dive in with each of you first and learn a little bit more about your background. Kelly, why don't we start with you? When did you first step into cannabis and specifically start getting inspired by cannabis tourism?
Wow. Well, I didn't even know cannabis tourism existed when I first started getting into cannabis, because it just wasn't a term that we used or thought about or knew about. It was about maybe 8 or 9 years ago that I opened up a cannabis tourism lounge. No, that's the wrong time. It was about 6 or 7 years ago that I opened up a cannabis lounge. And at that point in time, I still didn't know what cannabis tourism was. But then when you own a cannabis lounge, people start asking you questions about, cannabis events and wanting you to participate in things to do with cannabis tourism. So I learned a lot about that. And I remember, Brian, I was on a panel with you, and I think it was about 5 years ago, and it was about cannabis tourism and hospitality. And I still didn't really get it. I still didn't really understand, because I don't come from that background. I come from a background of education, and then I worked in the music industry as a radio broadcaster for many years. So I didn't know about hospitality and tourism, but I got that sort of bite and wanting to know more, I guess, when it comes to cannabis experiences, because that's the way that you can get the general public that is stigmatized or have their eyes and their ears closed to cannabis. If you can give them a great experience with cannabis or elevate them with cannabis, then you've got them. So that was sort of the bite to me, because my whole mission is global freedom of the plant. And so if you can get them with cannabis tourism and hospitality, well, that's the way you can rope them in.
Yeah, amazing. Tell us just a little bit about your lounge, just what the concept, what the journey's been like. Would love to hear a little bit more.
Sure. It was Kelly's Green Lounge, and it was open in Orono, Ontario, which is a village, literally a village of 1,500 people. They had never had anything cannabis there before, but that's where I lived, and that's where I found this little space that I renovated and made it into a lounge, and it was open for 2.5 years. And on the day that it opened, we had the mayor from the area and on the members of parliament, and they all came in and helped cut the green ribbon. And we did things like yoga talk and cannabis and comedy, and we had educational experiences, and we were growing alongside legalization. So legalization happened in 2018, and my lounge opened in 2019, October 17th, both dates. And we were just growing with the experiences of it and being with the community and learning about that. And so the lounge got too big for me, in the sense that Kelly's Green Lounge became the KGL Network and KGL TV. So I closed it down after 2.5 years, and then I just started to produce large scale stage shows and experiences on a grand scale for cannabis tourism in Canada and globally, both virtually and in person, and helped found and develop the Canadian Cannabis Tourism Alliance.
Amazing. Yeah, we've seen those skills come alive through the Alliance. It's wonderful. And Walid, thanks for being here. You have a long history in cannabis as well as music. If you could just share a little bit about your journey with cannabis, and specifically when you started stepping into the cannabis tourism conversation and what inspired that.
Yeah, absolutely. So similar to Kelly, my journey, I've been in the cannabis industry about 20 years now. So even before legalization, back in the legacy market. So my first steps kind of in the legal market was about 9.5 years ago when I did something similar to Kelly. I opened up a lounge downtown. It was called Youngsterdam Lounge. And at first it was a dispensary and the lounge. We launched it as kind of the Amsterdam type model at the time. And there was a lot of crackdowns and regulation changes shortly after. So we had to remove the dispensary portion, and we remained as a lounge for many years, hosting cannabis events, hosting um, product launches and everything. So there was about 3 or 4 lounges in total, including Kelly's, across all the cities here in Toronto. So not too many of them. It was a close knit community. And then about 4 years ago, I got into the legal cannabis retail network. So, as you mentioned, we opened up a chain in Cosmic Gardens and continue to operate and expand that now. So, I guess my first taste of cannabis tourism was when we had the lounge. We would have people come from out of town. They would find us off Google and stuff like that and come and visit us. We allowed people to smoke, mostly outside. We didn't have anything inside, and we were offering food as well. So we had, fries, poutines, we had
Mhm.
desserts, we had coffees, and it was working well. But then again, the city cracked down even further and just made it impossible for us to operate. So yeah, about 3 years ago, we founded the CCTA. Kelly and the group approached me to join, and of course, I was very excited. I've been advocating with the city and the province ever since the lounge days, kind of pushing the rules and the boundaries and trying to see what we can do. So it's part of the founding board, and after a 2-year period, I took over as president. So I'm going to be going on my 4th year now with the CCTA. It's been quite the journey for sure. We've grown exponentially since the first days that we launched the CCTA, and we just continue to be making waves in both the political, the event space, and the education space as well.
I love that. So I'd love to unpack each of those pillars.
Sure.
Let's go ahead and start with where I think is obviously the foundational layer of a lot of this, which is education, data, information,
Yes.
to power the whole thing. So, what in the 3 years of the CCTA, can you walk us through some of the education milestones that the associate or the alliance has worked on?
Yes, so there's a bunch of education initiatives that we have. Some of our members actually are cannabis educators. So we've brought on a bunch of members that are helping to educate people both locally and internationally. One of these groups, for example, Education, is a great partner of ours in terms of, educational seminars and also in terms of research and data. We have a pretty strong team around that. As you know, Susan Dupej was one of the founders and continues to contribute and work with the group. Yourself as well, Brian, that's helped us significantly with that. One of our board members, Brendan Roberts, as well as a renowned author and researcher for the group. So we're heavily focused on the education and research side. And when we're working with the government, of course, that's kind of what they're looking for, which is helping us to build relationships there and help them with, data collection and stuff, because it's all brand new when it comes to cannabis tourism.
I love that. Reverend Kelly, Walid mentioned, policymakers, stakeholders, rule makers as one of the audiences that you educate. What are a couple other audiences that you provide education and information to that round out the tourism conversation?
Yeah, it's really interesting is that when we first started the CCTA, we were just sort of focused on Canada and the different provinces. And then when cannabis legalization happened, each province was given their own sort of ability to make their own laws. And then each municipality was given for that. So there's all kinds of different pockets of cannabis that does different things from one region to the next. And so what we wanted to do was sort of connect the dots with that province to province. And that's what we first started doing with our data and our research and our collection. But since then, we have just broadened out around the world to connect the dots globally and internationally. It started really into the US, and then we just started receiving members from different places around the world. We've got South Africa, we've got a member from South Africa, we've got a member from Scotland now. And so it just started building and building that way. And then we developed a show within my network, within KGL TV, that coincides with the CCTA called the Cannabis Tourism Chronicles. And we're in our second season with that. And that just branched everybody out. And so we started connecting a network of that and seeing all these cannabis tourism pioneers around the world. And also seeing that there wasn't any real alliance or organization that was sort of connecting everybody together, and we were sharing that, and that's when we started having people that were coming to us because they were seeing that we were making changes with the government. We have an amazing government director of government policy, Jeremy Smith, that works alongside our alliance, and he just finds his way into every politician's door, and it's incredible. And they're willing to have that conversation about cannabis tourism now, 7 years later, as we're getting up to our 7th year anniversary next month in Canada. And so we're seeing that because we're making waves and we're having these conversations and these doors are being opened, more and more people are coming and saying, oh, can we be involved? Can we share with this? And it's so wonderful to see that we can collect hands-on data with these interactions with people around the world and hear about things that they're doing, the policies that are getting changed in their municipality and the conversations that they're having with their city halls and all of that. So I think it's a big thing that's happening worldwide, and it's just nice to be at the center of it.
Yeah, and you mentioned this national level advocacy, which I think really distinguishes the CCTA, having done some very effective work at the national level. And I'd love for Walid, maybe you can jump in and start it off, and Kelly would love to hear your perspective. But the work you've done is truly commendable. And if can you please share with the audience what some of that work has been from an advocacy point of view and some of the wins at the national level there for tourism?
Yeah, so there's been a lot. I mean, most of the progress has been engaging with policymakers across Canada, and getting a lot of the politicians kind of educated on what cannabis tourism is and the opportunities that exist. So it's opened up a conversation across all levels of government, so municipal, provincial, and federal. On the federal level, it's been really a successful campaign with a lot of the ministers. So Minister of Health, Minister of Finance, Minister of Tourism, even Minister of Economic Development, all kinds of stuff, international trade, when it comes to hemp. So it's opened up a lot of doors, and it's put us at the table at the decision-making level on the federal level. So we're in the Attorney General's office, who is basically responsible for changing all the laws that would allow for this industry to be created. So we're literally at the table with these guys writing the laws. Um, our lawyer, who is Harrison Jordan from Substance Law, actually put together about an 80-page regulatory proposal on what needs to be changed to create the industry. So when we sent that out, we got the attention of, the Attorney General, the AGCO, all the legal entities involved in creating this have sat with us at the table face to face in person, and have put us kind of in the driver's seat to get these regulation changes, and are listening to what we have to say to them and are implementing it in the law, which is great.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in there and I'll just say we're all volunteers. We're a federal not-for-profit organization, so we're not funded by anything or anyone. We're not professional lobbyists. We don't have lobbying money or anything. But each year, we are invited to visit Ottawa, our nation's capital, and to go to the Destinations Canada meeting. And that's the big meeting where like the Minister of Tourism comes in and the head of Air Canada and the head of hotels. And we get to sit there and we get to be part of that conversation. And I've sat at the table every year, and I'm honored to be going again in another couple of weeks. And I've talked to everybody at the table, and they've said, yeah, you know, we're a not for profit, but we get paid to be here, or we're funded to be here. That is not the case with the CCTA. We just run on like membership donations and membership fees, and we're just a grassroots organization that fully believes in changing these regulations and having things open up. Like, you can have a beer tent here at festivals. You cannot have a cannabis lounge. You can sell beer and wine and spirits or whatever at anything you want with permits. You cannot do that with cannabis. You cannot have cannabis beverages. So we need regulations to change for that and so many other things. I mean, don't get me on my soapbox, Brian. You know what will happen, but I just that's why we jump in. That's why we do what we do.
Yeah. Well, that 80-page document that Walid that you mentioned, I believe Thomas shared that there was a couple communication strategies upon arrival for visitors to Canada that actually were the rules of the road and groundwork and really public safety and visitor safety driven. Can you share with us a few of the wins from that 80-page playbook or recommendations that have actually come to fruition so far?
So there's a couple of things. So it's influenced some policies in Alberta and BC. Those were immediate wins. They've actually changed regulations there to allow for on-site sales of cannabis at events. And the BC government has actually reached out to us, and they've been very supportive and very active with us to help create these new regulations in BC for the sales of cannabis and cannabis drinks at events. So from that document, those were two major wins. The initiative we're talking about with Thomas is the QR code that we want to put in all major airports here in Canada, so that when visitors come to Canada, they're able to identify what's legal, what's not legal, where you can buy cannabis, where you can't. Because right now there is none of that. So when they come here, it's a bit of a security issue here when they land, because they'll go online and they'll just pick whatever they find on Google. They don't know if it's legal, if it's not, if it's safe. So we're trying to propose a solution that would solve all of that and, give address a security concern as visitors are coming in, especially with things like FIFA coming up next year and an influx of a whole bunch of tourists. You want them to be safe when they go to consume.
Absolutely. Great work. What other, I guess, are there any other wins? You have the QR code to communicate clearly, allow people to navigate the space in a safe way. You mentioned Alberta with some new opportunities through active advocacy. What are there? Is there a third or fourth example of success?
I think a really big win is our work in Niagara Falls.
Yes.
I think that right across the board, we have the tourism board there, we have municipality, we have and I'll let Wally share his stories a little bit about the work with the mayor. But overall, they're just so welcoming to us. They understand cannabis tourism. I mean, Niagara Falls, Canada is the tourism capital of Canada, essentially. And so they want it to be the cannabis tourism capital of Canada. And so it just feels like they're supporting us in all of our endeavors. And our big endeavor our big endeavor is to have 420 celebrated nationally as an actual holiday in Canada, the same way that you do St. Patrick's Day. That, not necessarily we get the day off, but we're celebrating it with parades and, people actually officially celebrating it. So that's one of the things the CCTA wants to do. And Niagara Falls is on board with that. They are welcoming us to be able to have an annual 420 celebration there every year on April 20th. They're ready for us to make big waves when regulations are changed, and I'll let Wally speak to that as well. But they're ready to support us, and they've been with us for years now.
Yep. Yeah, so they've definitely opened up to the whole concept of cannabis tourism. They've They've bought into it. They're ready to share venues where we can have events. As you know, we do a big 420 event every year, in hopes of having kind of a large scale music festival and summit, kind of a 2 day extravaganza, we called it last year. And it would comprise of, a large scale music festival with on site cannabis sales and drinks. And if that doesn't happen this year, at least the capacity to sample as they do at other events, and it would be a non-alcoholic event, so there'd be no alcohol, kind of a first of its kind, as we transition from festivals that are seeing decline in alcohol sales, and they want to try new concepts,
Mhm.
as well as a second portion to that, which would be kind of a cannabis tourism summit, more of a sit down, B2B type event the following day, which would include seminars, politicians speaking, mingling between producers and buyers and all of that. So that's what we're kind of working on there. And Niagara Falls is fully in support of us in this initiative.
Wonderful. So when it comes to the discussions that unfold, I was wondering if you two could speak to the discussions around inhalation versus non-inhalation consumption in relevance to tourism and events, as well as potency. And is that a lively discussion in the tourism, discussion around how to navigate that and what to make possible?
Yeah, the big hurdle is still the smoking portion, right? So when they're open to it, they're looking more in terms of drinks and I guess edible consumption. Smoking is it's going to be tough in terms of getting that done indoors. It's going to be more like where you can smoke cigarettes, you'll be able to smoke cannabis.
Mhm.
So there's ways to do that in things like music festivals. You could have a certain area where you could do it. So as long as it's outside, I think we can address the smoking. But in terms of our work, it's more the beverages and stuff like that that the government is looking to launch with.
Okay. Where does topical CBD or full spectrum spa massages play into this? And how do you guys, what's your platform to educate and to advocate for external consumption, right?
It's part of the regulatory changes in the proposal that Walid was sharing with you about. It's
Mhm.
part of there that you would be able to have a CBD massage at a spa, because we were finding we're having members that were looking for that. It is something that is popular in the United States of America. Wellness travel is popular worldwide, and
Mhm.
people are looking at Canada and saying, "Well, you're federally legal. Why can't I travel there for a CBD spa experience? Why can't that happen in Canada?" And it doesn't. Could you imagine if it could? I mean, that would be it. We have so many beautiful spas in Canada that don't have that. So that is one thing that when they wrote the Cannabis Act, it wasn't like they made it illegal. They just did not write a framework for these kinds of things. We should be able to. I've had my hair done, hair cutting. I'm there for a couple of hours. They offer me alcohol, mimosa time at the spa. Why can't we have cannabis beverages? We cannot. Why can't we go to a golf course and, drive around in our golf carts? You could do that with alcohol, but you cannot do that with cannabis. So these are
Mhm.
all part of the changes that we are proposing for.
Let's just talk for a second about tourism as a platform for brands to differentiate and grow. How do you two see tourism and the experience economy as a differentiator for cannabis brands that are hospitality minded? And what is the opportunity in this emerging space?
So there's a lot of synergy between the cannabis and tourism industry, just like there are with when you go to Niagara Falls, for example, there's wine tours, and you're able to go and you're able to sample, or you're able to go to the facility. Well, we basically could replicate that whole industry with cannabis. You would come to regions like BC or Ontario. You'd be able to take a cannabis tour. You'd be able to go to a cannabis facility. You'd be able to visit what they want, what they're doing, and what they're growing, and you'd be able to sample on site. So it opens that whole kind of tour
Mhm.
aspect can to the tourism industry. Again, the events portion where we can have music festivals and stuff like that, as well as the wellness portion and the medical travel tourism portion where people want to come to Canada and visit areas where they can continue to consume as a medical patient as well. So there's a lot of angles that are intertwined with the current tourism model.
I think my favorite intersection there is the cannabis weddings. And that's something that I work in
Yes,
my personal platform is the cannabis
correct.
weddings. And that's something that you could travel to a few places around the world for that. But I think people should be able to be coming to Canada and experiencing that as well. And, as Wally was saying, there's an intersection with almost anything. I mean, cannabis and comedy, cannabis and festivals, cannabis and music. And so all those intersections, and that's what people want, that's what they're looking for tourism experiences, traveling to different places to be able to experience that. They believe they can come to Canada to experience it all, and so we're on our way to making that happen.
Wonderful. So, from the Canadian Cannabis Tourism Alliance, what in your mind is the cannabis tourism sub brand of Canada? What are the two, three, or four pillars that you see emerging as the positioning on a global stage within the context of Canada competing with other countries for visitor dollars? What is the value proposition to travelers for the Canadian cannabis experience?
First of all, just in general, it's the quality of the product that we have here, right? So because we're federally regulated, the standards are very strict. So one of the value adds when you come here is you will be getting basically medical grade uh, consumption, like whether it be cannabis or edibles and all that. So there's a regulatory framework to allow for safety
Mhm.
in the product when you come. So that's definitely a big differentiator here. Jump
I'll
in
jump
there
in with
now.
one.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think that I think what they're going to see here are the experiences that they would
yeah,
never see
yeah,
anyplace,
got it. Yeah.
like
Mhm.
the dog sled guy, Wally, that we had an operator that joined as a CCTA member that was having dog sled experiences with cannabis. We have
Yeah.
the award-winning haiku promotions out of Alberta, Anisha Reindorf. She does Canna Drag. It's you go and it's you experience cannabis brands, cannabis consumptions while you're seeing like an award-winning drag show, the most fantastic performers. We also have cannabis conferences that you can come
Yeah.
to and
Okay. Yeah.
expos that are pioneering experiences here.
Correct.
We have the New Amsterdam Cafe that has been around, I
Yes.
think,
Correct.
17 years in British Columbia. And then we can talk about that British Columbia as a terroir, as a place that is
Mhm.
like the Emerald Triangle when it comes to cannabis. I mean, if you get BC Bud, you've got the goods, right? So
Yeah.
when you can come to Canada to experience some of that, nobody else in the world has what we have.
That's true. Yeah. That explains it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember, Kootenai Rockies, BC Bud, to your point, Reverend Kelly, this legacy producing region that has all these incredible cultural storytelling, moments to share with the world. So, yeah, very exciting. Well, let's talk a little bit about membership. So, when someone can join the CCTA, how would you, I guess, what would you share about the opportunity to become part of the organization, and what would be the next steps there, and what they can expect when they become a member?
So to join the organization, there's a link on our website, CanadianCannabisTourism.com. The membership fee is $250 per year. Obviously, the value adds that come with us is you have voting rights within the organization. You're able to join our monthly meetings and our special events. You would get discounted pricing on many of the initiatives that we have, along with special promotions for other members' businesses. For example, if you need insurance, we have a member that does insurance, so you'd have special rates over there. You'd be able to always give us your opinion on improvements that we need to bring to the government during our talks, so you'd have a voice in that. And we always look towards our members to help us with initiatives that we're hired for or any consulting needs. So that's always given preferentially to some of our members as well. So if there's something you want to add, Kelly, please go ahead.
Yeah, we have these wonderful monthly membership meetings, as Wally touched on, where you're able to come to that, and we have guest speakers that come from around the world and share their real intimate details about being cannabis tourism pioneers and operators. So there's just little pieces with that, and you're part of that founding community with us. And we're trailblazers here, and we're working now globally with the other network that you're involved with, Brian. And so it's just, we find that the people that are coming with us are advocates and activists that want to be part of that mission.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about this summit that the CCTA is spearheading and leading, that's happening on World Tourism Day on September 27th. Why don't you share a little bit about what's being built and launched there?
Thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for working on it with us, Brian. We would not have come up with the idea of doing it if it were not for you. And we're just so honored to be walking this walk with you. And so we're putting together this webinar summit. It's 4 hours and 20 minutes because I just like to sit in front of a computer producing shows for that long. But I thought it would be that kind of a good time. And there are people coming from all over the world. We've got 12 countries right now, but each week I put a couple more people on. There's more than 40 people. I thought it was going to be 30 I was capping it at, but nope, we've got 40 people now. And just people coming to show a snapshot of what cannabis tourism looks like around the world. Of course, Brian is going to be one of our keynote speakers. Walid is one of our speakers as well. And we just have people that are operators that, some of them I've met and I've heard their stories, and I'm wowed by what they've been doing over. Some of them have been doing it for decades, just pioneering in cannabis tourism. So we're going to show that snapshot. And we have politicians that are coming to view it from our own country, and we hope globally to be able to see what cannabis tourism looks like around the world. And we actually have a cannabis politician from Canada. I'll let Wally tell you a little bit about this gentleman, but he's coming to speak. So we've got an actual member of parliament that's coming to be part of what we're doing.
Yep. So she's referring to Patrick Wheeler, who's the cannabis caucus leader in Canada. Basically, he's responsible for anything related to cannabis and indigenous tourism and indigenous rights. So we're also heavily involved in the indigenous community. There's a gentleman named Keith Henry here who leads the Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada. And we've been in talks with them for several years now about potentially building a bridge between the two communities and bringing some of the indigenous community into the tourism opportunities that are arising in the future.
Wow, wonderful. How exciting. Okay, so mark your calendars for September 27th. Is that going to be after that conference finishes? Is there going to be any content or videos available on the CCTA channels, or how can people circle back if they weren't able to attend?
Absolutely. And I believe this podcast is out after that date. So people can tune in. Certainly right now, I know on KGL TV on my own platform, they'll be able to see it there. I'll be sharing it there. And then we'll find ways to put it all over our CCTA LinkedIn and little videos, clips. So just watch for it. And we'll make sure that Brian is tagged in it and the Beard Bros are tagged in it as well.
Yeah. It's really exciting. And we're going to be talking about what is a cannabis tourism lexicon, so we can really fine tune the communication between all these people that have been innovating in this space in different parts of the world, sharing best practices. What are people learning? How do we uplift public safety? What's the best expression for really developing this new travel trend with community vitality in mind and the highest expression of it? So really excited, and thank you so much for all the work that CCTA has done to kind of pick up this torch and run with it. I believe this is the first cannabis travel conference in the last 2 years. There really hasn't been a gathering of global, discussion, and And who better than the CCTA to pick up that torch and to lead it as people who are doing real great work at the national level and attracting this attention from around the world for good reason. So just hats off to you and your team. Is there anything else you'd like to share prior to wrapping up this podcast about the CCTA? Where they can find out more information, anything
Yeah, for sure. I'm hoping that everybody will have a little spark to be able to be part of our Canadian Cannabis Tourism Alliance Awards. So we started at the very first time this year. We had 3 awards, and going forward next year, we have 12 awards, and some of them are for international operators. So we did it in person this year at an event in June, and we're going to hopefully do it September next year for World Cannabis Tourism Day in real life, where we have Cannabis Tourism Awards. So if that's something that you're interested in, you'll be able to find more on our website coming up.
Wonderful. Walid, any last comments or things to share?
No, I think we've covered it all. If people want to check us out, again, www.canadiancannabistourism.com, and we're on LinkedIn at Canadian Cannabis Tourism. Our Instagram is down, as everybody's is, so we kind of holding off on that for a little bit.
All right, wonderful. Well, Kelly and Walid, thank you for sharing your perspective and for your dedication to advancing the modern day cannabis travel trend. Travel Tuesday is brought to you by the Beard Bros Media Network, where culture meets industry. I'm your host, Brian Applegarth. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next month for another episode of Travel Tuesday. Thanks.
Thank you.